Welcome to Stand By Please.
With me, Antonia Collins from the Bamboo Manager Project.
And me, Jacqui George from Sharjah Performing Arts Academy.
In this podcast, we talk all things stage management. Join us and our guests as we try to answer the question, what is your stage manager really thinking?
Hello, Jacqui George. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. Week 13.
I think we're slightly delirious today, aren't we?
I think we are slightly delirious today. I've been debating, because I've been counting the week, in my diary. And I've been turning the corners down of each week. So I wouldn't normally turn the corners down of each week, but I've decided to turn the corners down of each week while we were in this lockdown situation. And then I've had a dilemma now because I'm like, now week 13, shall I start again at 1? Or shall I keep going 13, 14, 15? Shall I do another block of 12 weeks? For a good 30 minutes the other day, debated which was the best thing to do. I think that's slightly worrying.
Yes.
I think it's kind of part of the insanity that's now occurring. I went to Marks and Spencer's and for the first time in 13 weeks, and I had a totally kind of emotional response to being in Marks and Spencer's because it reminded me of work. Running into Marks's for a pan au chocolat on the way to work, and it definitely reminded me of running into Marks's after rehearsal to buy a can of train gin for the journey home. And that's the first time I felt really emotional about it. Wow, this is weird. This is weird. And I thought I was going to cry in the middle of Marks and Spencer's.
Well, it's emotional times. I guess it's all part of that physical memory, isn't it? But going back to your diary, I have a thing about diaries and notebooks. Do you keep meticulous and neat diaries? Are they all like beautifully written and you've got clear to-do lists and you've got, action plans and...
No. I mean, they're quite neat. Oh, so I have a notebook and I have a diary, and the diary's A4 size. And then you've got a week in A4. I mean, I'm very particular. I have aspirations to be David Miller. Do you know David Miller, the production manager who's now at Bath Spa? I'd never met anybody as neat as David Miller before I met David Miller. And he's the person whose desk has nothing left on it at the end of the day. Everything goes back in its drawers. It's immaculate. And his diary is an immaculate list of things to do, which he then crosses off. That's the kind of level of, perfectionism that I am hoping to aspire. But I don't do that at all. No, I write lots of messy notes. But I do use coloured pens. I write things in coloured pens. So different subjects have different colours. Is your diary immaculate?
It's not immaculate. I don't keep a paper diary anymore. So I've just got my notebook. But my notebook, it starts off well-intentioned and neat, and then probably by halfway through. But I do keep all of my notebooks a log, and I can look back on them. I don't really actually look back on them thinking about it. I just keep them. But do you aspire to be, or do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Yes and no.
Right.
In the sense that I think I'm a recovering perfectionist. I think for a long time I thought being perfect meant you were better. Let's go with that, as a concept. And there are not enough hours in this podcast, Jacqui, to talk about how I got to that point in time. I think when I discovered stage management, a lot of my natural perfectionism tendencies kind of went, oh, there's a kindred spirit. I need to be organised. I need to write lists. I need to tick things off. And I think that kind of side of me really kind of probably took off into orbit at that point in the equation. And of course, stage management is an accuracy job. You don't do things differently. You don't set the stage differently one day for a show just because you feel like it. It is about things being perfectly done, isn't it, in that sense? So if you take the word perfect out and you just say accurate, it's not quite so damning. But there's so much kind of wrapped up in this idea of being perfect, because of course if you set yourself up on a pedestal to be perfect, there's only one way to go, isn't there? To fall off it. And I think a lot of stage managers would recognize those tendencies, whether you call it perfectionism or not. I reckon if we got 100 stage managers in a room and said, you know, if we used other words rather than perfectionism, I think they would kind of go, yeah, that's me actually.
I agree. This morning, I was thinking about our conversation. So I got on the internet, and bizarrely, I did do a bit of research and a bit of background reading. And if you Google stage management and perfectionism, the first 7 hits were books and articles about stage managers being perfectionists. So I thought, even if you are new to stage management and reading about stage management, or going back to a book or a text or an article that you might have come across previously, this notion of perfectionism, I feel, is put on you as a stage manager, and you feel like you have to live up to that notion of being, well, I'm perfect, I'm a stage manager, I'm here to do the best job and do it all well and accurate.
But that's so true, isn't it? Stage managers aren't allowed to have bad days. Actors, sorry, my acting friends, are allowed to forget their lines and, you know, forget to carry a prop on or whatever, and everybody's always very kind, mainly, and lovely to them about those things. Whereas for stage managers, whoo, no, forget it. You know, why wasn't that done? Why wasn't that in the right place at the right time? I think, yeah, you're right. We kind of set the role up to be like that, and it's weird that you kind of, why are stage managers not allowed to have off days?
I don't know. I attended the Broadway Symposium a couple of weeks ago, and I apologize, I can't remember who said it, but in one of the sessions, one of the panel said, and I love, this is the one thing I think I've taken from that weekend most prominently, he said, let's move away from the idea that as stage managers, we have to solve everything for everyone. And I'm completely guilty of that. I think I can solve the world sometimes, you know, give me a chance and I'll have a crack at COVID. But why do we feel that as stage managers, we've got to solve it? It becomes our problem. And yes, it is part of our responsibility, but going back to that teamwork and that collaboration, it's not always just the stage manager's responsibility to problem solve and to be the perfect one in the team to come up with the answers, is it?
No, not at all. And I think, you know, going slightly off piece, but you'll pull us back. I've got great faith in you. And I think you should have a go at COVID, incidentally. I think you do a great job. I think we've set up this conceit that stage managers can solve everything. But then we've allowed that to happen. So when I teach stage management, I'm always very fond of saying to students, we need to empower other people in our teams, including directors and actors and creatives, to help them do their job, but we shouldn't be mothering them. And I do think we've fallen into a trap that is about mothering, and I certainly used to be very guilty of that. I have, you know, that's why I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I have pulled back from that. So for example, in the past, I might have sent out a call sheet and then might have followed up with a little bit of text messaging to make sure that everybody had seen it. Whereas now I'm like, I'm not going to text you. This is the thing. We've set up this routine. You know that every day you're going to get emailed a call sheet. If you don't see the call sheet in your inbox, feel free to message me to say, I have not received said call sheet. I'm sure you have done and it's in your junk, but we won't worry about that. We've magnified the problem ourselves. And of course, why would you kick back against that? If you've got somebody who's doing everything for you, why would you possibly kick back against that? You wouldn't, would you? So I feel like we've kind of made the problem worse, probably because of the kind of personalities that we are to start off with.
Heaven forbid that somebody said, well, you didn't send out that call sheet, and you know that you did. Yeah.
Well, and I think part of our perfectionism is we probably take things quite personally. Mm-hmm. So we'd rather send the call sheet and then text the company as well, to mm-hmm. make sure that everybody's in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And that way we've ticked the box and everything is happening as it should be. And we don't want to run the risk of that not being the situation. I feel like I'm getting better at it. That doesn't mean that I don't want things to be perfect. We can't get away from the words now, can we? I want things to be right. I want things to be right, and part of that means that I am going to make that extra list and double check it several times over. Where I think it really hurts, probably, is in queuing. I think that's where the perfectionism things for me manifest themselves the most. And you know, and even worse, so you make a mistake in the show, you have to get through that mistake because you can't stop the show unless it's an absolutely catastrophic thing. You've got to keep going, and then you write a report where you say LXQ77 called early, DSM error. You know, I have wasted a lot of headspace over the years worrying about when my queuing hasn't been perfect. You know, I'm sticking with the word.
I'm guilty of that though as well, and I've seen students be guilty of that completely, because I guess when it comes to queuing, certainly that's a really easily identifiable moment or moments when you can say, well, that wasn't perfect. That wasn't right on the button. So we highlight those. Oh my word, DSM error. Isn't it bizarre? I mean, we have said, and you do see in show reports, if a queue is late, whether it's board op error or DSM error, 9 times out of 10, the DSM will blame themselves. This like weight of, you know, responsibility. And the number of show reports I've read where it's like DSM error, DSM error. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just life, and it was late for whatever reason. The actor was late or early, the board op was late or early, somebody misheard, they've got a cold, maybe their ear's a bit blocked. I don't know, whatever it is. But default position would be, DSM error.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We take the hit every time. Why do we do that? You know, when you call shows, and I don't call shows for a living anymore, but when you call shows, you know, that time when it's absolutely all perfect, you're like, oh my God, amazing. And other times you might be out by the tiniest of seconds, but you still feel like it wasn't perfect. And it's really difficult to get over that for some people, you know, and certainly some I've worried about more than others. It depends how obvious it is, isn't it? I was thinking about this story last night. A million years ago, I was on the book for La Bohème, and it was in English. It was sung in English, and the singer, was slightly prickly around the edges. Let's just go with that, shall we? And I called the wrong queue number. I don't know why. I called the wrong queue number. And the board operator, doing technically the correct thing, triggered the queue number that I had called. Now, might have been slightly nicer if he hadn't have done that, but never mind, because it was a snap blackout and the singer had just sung and the fire burns like the rising of the sun. Oops. And yeah, oh God, I can feel it now. And he came off stage and he absolutely laid into me. And I carried that around for a long time. And it was a mess. Yes, it was a mistake, because you care so much. And caring about something isn't wrong, but you kind of, it's back to the resilience episode, isn't it, at the beginning? You know, you've got to kind of protect yourself to a certain degree. And of course you want to care enough to improve and make it better, and for the show to be perfect and run exactly as it was meant to. But it is a live medium and things do go wrong.
And do you think, has there been a time for yourself, or have you seen it in other co-workers, where that perfectionism has begun to or manifest itself in a way that's not healthy for the individual or the company?
I think, you know, a lot of ASMs go and check their props table probably more times than you necessarily need to. And I certainly, depending on how I am, you know, how I'm feeling physically and mentally, I can have that little twitch as well, in terms of going back to check something, you know it's there, you know it's that, you know you've done it. Ironically, it's one of those funny things, I don't feel it so much when I call shows. I think that's a slightly out of body experience, that you're kind of in the zone. You know, I say to students, it's a bit like you've been strapped into a roller coaster and you're not allowed off until the interval and there's nothing you can do about it. I think all of the personality traits that draw people to stage management in the first place are great, but can, if unchecked, you know, it's so good if something goes wrong and an actor comes off stage and you've been part of whatever's gone wrong, and an actor's like, it's okay, things happen.
There's so many quotes, and so many people have said in different contexts, you know, a stage manager is your mum, your friend, your partner, your child psychologist, all of the above job titles. Actually, no, we don't need to put those pressures on ourselves, because being perfectionists, we want to be the best child psychologist, best friend, boss, partner, mum, whatever. And that's just too much pressure. I see it. I absolutely... this feels like a confession, but I see perfectionism in myself manifest in a bad way or in a negative way. Sometimes I have real issue delegating, and because
Yes.
I won't trust may be too strong a word, but I won't give the opportunity of the jobs that can be done absolutely just as well, if not probably better, the majority of the time, to an ASM when I've been stage managing, maybe, for example. Sort of, in my head, I'm saying sorry to all my ASMs.
All of the things that have happened in the last 10 years in my kind of stage management journey have kind of brought me to a headspace now where I am almost trying to be anti-perfect. And I think the stage managers that I've worked with of recent have probably suffered the worst, because I've been like, oh, it's fine. You know, what's the problem? Okay, let's do confessions. You know, I think some of our listeners will enjoy it. But I certainly, when I taught at Welsh College, there were moments looking back on that I am not proud of, where I wiped the floor with some stage management students because something wasn't set properly. And I'm not very proud of that now. And I kind of have totally gone the opposite way, that I want it to be brilliant and I want the show to be amazing. And I want people to do their job. That's a different thing. Maybe that's just an age thing.
I'm going that way. I think it's a sliding scale. By the time I retire, maybe I'll be best off out of practice. The majority of us work for ourselves. We're self-employed. That notion of we're only as good as the last job. Where are you going to get your next job from? So you don't want to be imperfect, because that'll jeopardize your next move, isn't it?
You know, that's another thing about being older and having more experience, is of course you've worked with more people, so you've got a bigger repertoire of things to pull on. You know, there's a couple of I've been collecting quotes on perfectionism. Well, not really quotes, but you know, bumper stickers. And Mary Portas, who I just adore. Anybody who has not listened to the podcast or not read the Work Like a Woman book, I should be on commission, because everything she says appeals to me. And she says you should be striving for excellence, not perfectionism. And in fact, she calls perfectionism a straitjacket to growth and development. And I was like, yep, they absolutely. But then I've written another one down and now I've got no idea where I found it. It must have been somebody on Instagram, said that they were striving for perseverance, not perfection. So to keep going and keep learning and to keep growing is better than kind of stagnating and saying, oh, well, I'm perfect here, so I need to kind of keep moving forward. And I kind of like that one as well. But, you know, I don't know about you, but in class, a lot of the time I've asked students to do some kind of personality testing. We've done it for fun, you know, there's loads of them, isn't there? And of course, I always come up as the perfectionist. It's just a disaster zone for me. I need to stop doing them because I always come out like that.
Funnily, you should say about that, because this morning I thought, right, I'm going to take one of these tests and see how much of a perfectionist I am. So again, online, found one, and it was on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a perfectionist are you? So I did all the questions, I answered them honestly. I maybe consider myself, I think I consider myself to be a perfectionist, or trying to be a perfectionist in some areas of my life. By no means all areas. But you know what score I got?
No.
A 4. I'm a bit gutted, to be honest.
Whereas I did the Enneagram test, which was I didn't know that one, and I come out as a type 1 perfectionist. I always come out, in the perfectionist / diplomat / and maybe that's also part of it, that in that kind of, if you were trying to quantify not the skills of a stage manager, but some of the personality traits of a stage manager, that we do tend to be quite diplomatic. And so just coming back to your DSM error thing, we would rather take the hit on it than cause, I don't want to upset the board up, they're a bit prickly, I'll just take it.
A friend of mine who is also a stage manager has said to me, and she's fantastic because she's really honest and she'll tell it like it is, but she's said to me before that I'm too nice and I'm too diplomatic and I need to be, and I'm like, no, but I want to be diplomatic and I hate confrontation and I want to avoid those scenarios. And funnily enough, the quiz I did, where I got 4 out of 10 on being a perfectionist, not that I'm still carrying it, honestly, but they linked other personality traits to perfectionism. And one of them was diplomacy. That is very closely linked. And another one, interestingly, which is why I think maybe we, like your brilliant quote you just said from instead of perfectionism, excellence, we get rid of the word perfectionism because they also closely link anxiety with perfectionism.
For sure.
Yeah.
The difference between that narrow line you walk between wanting it to be perfect and worrying, and then tipping from worrying into anxiety, that's a very very narrow ledge to be walking along. And I think that's one of the things that you find very difficult sometimes as a stage manager, that kind of idea of being able to throw it off and not worry so much about it. I would say keep the bar low. Did the show happen? Did the audience enjoy themselves? Did they, or learn something, whatever the point of your show is? Yeah, they did. Great. Okay, lovely, marvellous. Let's try it again tomorrow. And I think, just coming back to that idea of the cueing thing, rehearsals, yes, I know, we all go to rehearsals, we all sit in rehearsals, lovely. But actors and singers and dancers are getting weeks of rehearsal often. And then our turn, when we kind of take our centre stage moment is when we go into tech, isn't it? And for the person who's calling the show, maybe they get 2 shots at a dress rehearsal and then they're on. And if you're lucky, you're getting some previews to work through it. It just depends on what kind of show you're on. And you can't rehearse that. It is not rehearsable in any way. Yes, I know you're learning the show in the rehearsal room, and so you are becoming very familiar with the lyrics or the text or whatever, so that's helping for sure. And then one of my favorite things I ever heard was I went to a seminar by Jonathan Deans, the sound designer, and he asked the room who the hardest working 2 people were in the team, and everybody said, oh, the sound designer, and he was like, nope. And he said the deputy stage manager and the sound operator, because they are the 2 people who are delivering cues live every day. And I thought, and actually people in the room were like, oh, and I was like, no, go him. I absolutely agree with you.
Creativity of that role, I think, is huge, absolutely huge. And I feel we should have our own stage management manifesto, because I was just thinking about a time years ago when I was given 2 days to learn a book that I was taking over for it was a UK national, and I did it, I learned it. It wasn't the most complicated, but I got through it and it was fairly clean. And there was a bit of me, I was like, yeah, it's done, deep breath, whatever. Came out of stage door, and one of the team came up to me and was like, oh, well done, that's great, really great. First thing I say was, oh, no, LXQ4. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm just knocking
Yes!
myself, and I'm actually thought I did an all right job. So I think that notion of perfectionism, and we can't, we have to masquerade that cover to the rest of the team is crazy.
A little shameless plug for Call Queue, because the program that Gail has created means that you can learn, you can practice some queuing and at least get into the rhythm of it, because before that point we were all sat with either a video or an audio recording. So I do think that's a useful tool, but the reality of the situation is we do most of our practice in live show mode, and that's a lot. It's a lot for anybody to take on, and I think people should cut themselves a bit more slack, really. And that's what I say about keep the bar low.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the many exciting things about that software is the ability to be able to learn a book that you have to move on to. We should definitely ask Gail to join us one week and have
And obviously, the longer you're on the show, the more you call it, the more you sit into it, don't you? It's amazing in week 1 where you think, oh my God, I'm never going to spit these cues out. And by week 3, you're on comms going, oh, I saw a really nice jumper in, so stand by, let's cue. I always think that transition is incredible. And of course, most students never get to do that because shows don't run for long enough. And I sometimes think they don't believe me when I say, I promise you, if you were doing this show for 3 weeks, by week 3, you would have sorted out those things. It's a weird old thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe we should just agree that perfectionism is out of the vocabulary and excellence is in. And that way we can all move forward, and we'll promise to stop blaming ourselves as DSM.
Why do we do this for a living? Yes, that sounds like a great plan.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Stand By Please. Join us next time when we'll be talking about the transferability and value of stage management skills with Barbara Eifler. Until then, Jacqui and Antonia, off comms.